Well, President Joe Biden addressed Congress and the nation in his annual State of the Union speech. He talked about many of the issues concerning Americans, from the economy, foreign wars, and the migrant crisis at the southern border. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson joins us now with more from that speech. Good morning, Rashad.
Hey, Danielle. Good morning. While the state of
Thank you, Rashad. Well, given the divided government, does the president believe that he can work with Republicans on some of the issues that he mentioned?
President Biden is holding out hope that he can.
Now to the fight in Ukraine. Russia said its forces took complete control Saturday of a city in eastern Ukraine, and this comes as Congress is debating whether to send more money to the country. Washington reporter Rashad Hudson joins us now live with the very latest. Good morning, Rashad.
Hey, Danielle, good morning to you. President Biden is putting pressure.
China's Republican primary is less than a week away. The state's former governor, Nikki Haley, is hoping for an upset win despite the polls showing her down by double digits to GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. Washington reporter Rashad Hudson joins us now live about the race. Good morning, Rashad.
Hey, Danielle, good morning to you. Nikki Haley is sharpening.
Government shutdown, and lawmakers have still not reached an agreement on a deal. The leaders of the House and the Senate will meet with President Biden later today, where they are expected to discuss how to avoid that shutdown. Washington correspondent Basil John has the latest as the clock is ticking. Good morning, Basil. What can you tell us?
Well, Danielle, good morning. And there is still no clear path for Congress.
Well, Basil, could Congress just possibly pass another short-term resolution like the previous times?
So a short-term resolution is an option. However,
President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump are taking trips down to the border later today. However, both of them are going to be in different areas, showcasing different perspectives on immigration. Washington reporter Basil John is alive to tell us about the border visits. Good morning, Basil.
Well, Danielle, good morning. And the two visits put the
Well, the United States Congress is taking on TikTok. A bill that could essentially ban the popular app is gaining momentum on Capitol Hill, with a vote on it expected this week. Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt has the details. Good morning, Hannah.
Danielle, good morning. The bill would for banning TikTok would only help out Facebook. Danielle, back to you.
Thank you, Hannah. Well, if the bill does become a law, how soon do you think that users could see their access to TikTok disappear?
Well, the legislation would give the parent company ByteDance about 6 months to sell TikTok. And if they do that, U.S. users might be able to keep their access. But if not, that's when it would be banned.
All right, Hannah, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Well, major news for some student loan borrowers. The Biden administration is canceling an additional $1.2 billion worth of student loan debt. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson joins us now live with more on the plan. Good morning, Rashad.
Hey, Danielle, good morning. The plan is expected to.
The anti-war protests on college campuses are causing controversy. Lawmakers are split in their reactions to the demonstrations and their views on how to handle them. Washington correspondent Hannah Brandt explains. Good morning, Hannah.
Danielle, good morning. These protests range from marches.
Thanks, Hannah. Well, Education Secretary Miguel Cardona talked about the protests at Senate hearings this week. What did he say?
Yeah, that's right. Well, he told senators.
Brownsville police need your help in finding two men who robbed a store. Take a look at this video. Police say the man in the blue sweater and the man in the black sweater robbed a Vape City store on Boca Chica. The man in the blue sweater injured an employee, and if you have any information on where you can find the two men, call Brownsville Police. And happening today, the Brownsville Police Department will host their State of Brownsville Police Department event. Now, the BPD police chief is going to talk about some of the department's achievements and challenges faced, as well as future projects and community events. The State of Brownsville Police Department will start at 9 a.m. And happening tomorrow, the Edinburgh Mayor Ramiro Garza Jr. along with the Edinburgh City Council is going to host their State of the City address. It's going to be held at the Region 1 Service Center starting at 7 p.m. The mayor is going to talk about some of the city's accomplishments, economic development, and public safety initiatives from 2023. Now, he's also going to highlight some of the upcoming city projects for this year. And a great white shark was tracked in the Gulf waters. It's named Libeth, and her appearance brings some excitement to people in the valley. Blake Brown tells us all about her journey thus far. Well, tonight, President Biden will deliver his State of the Union address to American people and a divided Congress, just months before the next presidential election. Washington reporter Rashad Hudson joins us now live with a look at the speech. Good morning, Rashad.
Good morning, Danielle. During his State of the
U.S. Supreme Court rejected a legal challenge to the abortion pill mifepristone. The unanimous ruling preserves access to the widely used medication for now. Our Washington correspondent, Jesse Tenor, explains all about both sides and what they're saying. The government ahead of a crucial deadline on Friday. If lawmakers don't pass a spending measure, there will be a partial government shutdown. Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt explains where the funding effort stands.
Good morning. We are seeing some progress.
President Joe Biden's son guilty of 3 felony charges related to buying a gun while addicted to drugs. Jesse Tenor joins us live with Washington's response to the Hunter Biden conviction. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning to you as well, Danielle. President Biden says he...
General Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress. Washington correspondent Jesse Tenor joins us live with what happens next. Good morning, Jesse.
Good morning to you as well, Danielle. So it's now up to the Justice Department to decide.
Well, the House is back from recess today after congressional leaders and the president had an intense meeting on Tuesday. The pressure is up on Congress to address the looming shutdown, Ukraine and Israel and the southern border. A Washington correspondent Basil John is live with the details. Good morning, Basil.
Well, Danielle, good morning. So time is running out.
Well, the battle for the White House is picking up the pace as the U.S. faces a rematch between President Biden and former President Donald Trump. The presidential election is still several months away, but both leaders are rallying voters now. Washington, D.C. correspondent Hannah Brandt explains how.
In dueling rallies in Georgia.
Final irreversible decision Wednesday evening.
Thank you, Ryan. Now, Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis has declined to revisit the case, and he says that he remains fully convinced that Ivan Cantu brutally murdered 2 innocent victims and called the evidence presented at the trial undeniable. Cantu's execution is set for 6 p.m. And dangerous and deadly winter storms are sweeping across the country, with snow and ice being the main threats. George Solis reports from New Jersey. And across the U.S., anti-war protests on college campuses are causing controversy. Lawmakers are split in their reactions to the demonstrations and their views on how to handle them. Washington correspondent Hannah Brandt explains.
The protests range from marches to...
And protests at UT Austin lead to dozens of arrests as well, and this comes as larger gatherings are expected today nationwide, as groups are calling for May Day protests to stand with Palestine. Our Monica Madden digs into the police response at UT compared to other Texas campuses. Cold continues. Coming up on NBC 23 News at midday, we have the latest on temperatures and how you can stay safe and warm. And calls for conservation amid freezing temperatures. ERCOT continues calling for power conservation. Coming up, the latest on the organizations and what they plan to do about the cold and how it's continuing. NBC 23 Midday starts right now.
From South Padre Island to Rio Grande City, this is NBC 23 News Midday.
Good morning, Valley, and welcome to NBC 23 News Midday. I'm Danielle Banda. County officials confirm protesters at UT Austin are facing more serious charges than last week, including resisting arrest and possibly assault. Demonstrators were attempting to set up tents on the main wall of campus, which is a violation of university rules. Ryan Chandler has the very latest on this escalating situation. Jessica, well, At least one person is dead as the wildfires continue to grow in the state's panhandle. According to the Texas Forest Service, Smokehouse Creek has at least 850,000 acres that have now been burned. The fire destroyed homes, burned vast ranch lands, killed livestock, and forced evacuations across the Texas panhandle. Now, many residents who were forced to evacuate are now returning, and some are finding that there's little left of their homes. Monica Madden spoke with the families in the town of Canadian, which at one point was cut off by the fire.
This would have been.
That's right, and the relocation comes after the shelter and the city agreed to end its partnership. So our Joe DeLeon brings us the story. CBS 4 530, I'm Danielle Banda, and we have...
I'm Chief Meteorologist Brian Hale, working with the incomparable Dan Band. Good to have you here.
I'm so excited about this. It seems like it's a beautiful Sunday, Brian. And on Saturday, long-awaited aid for Ukraine made it past the House by a bipartisan vote as part of a larger foreign aid package. The bills will provide more than $26 billion to support Israel, more than $60 billion for Ukraine, and around $8 billion for the Indo-Pacific, including Taiwan. House Speaker Mike Johnson moved forward with the vote after months of discussions over Ukraine aid and funding for the border.
6.
Good evening, Valley, and welcome to CBS 4 News Live at 6. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Danielle Banda. Well, we begin with your Valley headlines this evening. In Mission, a murder investigation continues at this hour. This week, police released video of a truck driven by a suspect believed to be involved in the death of a 25-year-old man. On Monday, police responded to the 2500 block of West Expressway 83, where they found a black Chevy pickup truck with several bullet holes. Inside, they found the victim with various gunshot wounds, although details on this case are limited. Thank you, Freddie. Now, in your national headlines, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis this week enacting a new law barring local governments from requiring heat protection for outdoor workers. The bill has caused some controversy coming after Miami-Dade County leadership last year took up an ordinance requiring employers to provide access to water and breaks in the shade. Bill sponsors have said that the intent is to ensure that employees have the ability to govern themselves, and the new law comes after 2023 was named as the hottest year in recorded history. The unanimous ruling preserves access to the widely used medication for now. Washington correspondent Jesse Tenor explains both sides and what they're saying.
Both sides say this is still far from over. Since
you don't have to drive, it's best to stay home. But if you do, you can always check road conditions at drivetexas.org for the latest information. And due to this cold weather, the Alton Police Department is going to be making phone calls to all of their residents. This is part of their Are You OK program. Dispatch officers are going to call residents asking if they're indeed okay. And if they answer yes, the officer will hang up. Now, if a caller expresses any type of concern, dispatch is going to send an officer to the home to check on the homeowner. And if no one answers the phone or if there's a busy signal, dispatch is going to call back until the line is picked up. And Brownsville ISD are just some of those districts, but we do have a full list of those delays over on valleycentral.com. And the Arctic blast is causing problems across most of the country. Wind chills are dropping as low as 50 below in some areas. And there are at least 7 deaths so far reported, but it could be another 24 hours or more before things start to thaw out. Jay Gray has the story. When it does happen, knowing how to properly heat your home is important. We spoke with Brownsville firefighters who say that mishandling space heaters can lead to dangerous and even deadly outcomes. We also spoke with the American Red Cross, whose team is working with warming centers across the valley to make sure that those in need of resources do have that available when the temperatures do drop like this. Place program where you can easily find a polling place in the county. Now, keep in mind you do have to have a valid form of ID to vote. This includes a driver's license, a military ID, a handgun license, or a passport, just to name a few. And hundreds of residents are suffering from severe allergies and a haze in the air. Much of it is to blame from agriculture burning in Mexico, which causes smoke from those areas to drift on northward toward the valley. Happening tomorrow, the city of Hidalgo will host a self-serve sandbag distribution. The bags are limited to 6 per household and 10 for businesses. You do have to be a resident of the city of Hidalgo as well as show proof of residency. The distribution is going to be held behind the Payne Arena from 5 to 8 p.m. And if you can't make it to that one, there's going to be another one on Saturday happening from 10 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon. SpaceX has not given an exact date for its next Starship launch, but Elon Musk did say on X that it could happen sometime next month. And you can expect a number of nightly closures this week as part of the FAR Interchange project. The I-2 westbound frontage road between Cage Boulevard and Sugar Road will close nightly through Sunday, June the 23rd. The I-69C northbound frontage road between I-2 and 495 will be closed nightly through Wednesday, and the I-69C southbound frontage between 495 and I-2 will be closed nightly through Wednesday through Friday, rather. Now, all these closures are expected to reopen by 6 in the morning, and we'll have more details on valleycentral.com. And the U.S. Consulate General in Matamoros issued a travel warning for parts of Mexico. The notice states that the consulate is aware of organized kidnappings occurring on intercity buses departing Reynosa. And attendance numbers have dropped for public schools across the Rio Grande Valley coming out of the pandemic specifically. Students are getting less class time, and school districts are saying they're getting less money. Brian Svensson explains the funding difficulties that school districts are facing. And a shopping plaza on the banks of the Resaca in San Benito is at the heart of a lawsuit. The developers are suing the city's Economic Development Corporation, and Brian Svensson explains how the pandemic brought them to this point. And a Valley surgeon is trying to decide if he should allow the state of Texas to build a border wall on his property. Construction of the new wall in Zapata County depends on landowners selling their property rights to the state. Border Report's Sandra Sanchez has the story.
This is the first.
Sounds like a plan, Jessica. Thank you. Now, in your campaign 2024 news, polls predicted former President Trump would win big, and he did. The former president dominated the Iowa caucuses, but there were surprises in the race as well. And one candidate ended his bid for the White House. Now, the focus shifts to New Hampshire. Alice Barr has the latest. DeSantis is going to make a stop in South Carolina, where he thinks he has a better shot. Caucus primaries. These are some of the words that we're going to hear as we inch closer to November. But do you know the difference between a caucus and a primary? Well, caucuses are meetings run by political parties rather than the government and do not directly elect a presidential candidate. Primaries, on the other hand, are hosted by the government and allow individual voters to cast a ballot in favor of their favorite candidates running for office. An Edinburgh Police Department is warning residents about a new phone scam. Now, police say that the caller claims to be from Medicare and claims to be associated with the city of Edinburgh. Even the department itself has gotten calls from these scammers who ask for your personal information and try to trap you with tricky payment methods, so beware. SpaceX is now one step closer to launching its fifth Starship rocket. The FAA will not require an investigation into the fourth launch. The FAA says, quote, all flight events for both the Starship and Super Heavy appear to have occurred within the scope of planned and authorized activities. And a fundraiser next month with a potential VP candidate. Trump and Senator J.D. Vance will appear together at an event in Vance's home state of Ohio. And Trump did win the state in 2016 and again in 2020. And marijuana advocates are pleased this morning as the Justice Department is set to make a major change in federal restrictions on the drug. Blaine Alexander has the details. And if you made the decision to stay home, hopefully you made another important decision, and that's protecting your pipes. It's part of the 4 Ps: people, pets, pipes, and plants. You've all heard the tips. Leave your faucet dripping so that your pipes don't freeze. And while you may waste some water, yes, that's nothing compared to pipe bursting and the amount of money that you're going to pay for repairs. Learned the name of the 20-year-old who is dead after a rollover crash in Mission. Police say that the incident happened early Sunday morning near FM 495 in Los Ebanos in Mission. And details are limited, but we'll keep you updated on air and online at valleycentral.com. And a quick heads up for drivers in Hidalgo County. Well, the city of San Perlita wants to remind residents to not flush Pampers, rags, and other waste. Take a look at this picture. City crews are finding these types of items and they're clogging up the sewer, causing the city pumps to not work properly. Pampers, rags, and again, other hygiene or waste products need to be thrown away in the trash. If it seems like everyone you know has been sick, it may have something to do with the rise in both flu and COVID cases this season. Stephanie Gosk tells us about how serious it is. The former president's victory in the Iowa caucus smashed the record for a Republican presidential candidate, and Trump received 51% of the votes, which is 30 points higher than candidate Ron DeSantis, who came in second place. The judge's decision would come April the 8th, and the judge said a ruling was going to take some time because of the complexity of the case. And happening today, Brownsville ISD is expected to discuss plans to consolidate its elementary schools. Now, last month, the Board of Trustees decided to move forward with the plan to consolidate 6 schools into 3, and the move is designed to help the district to save money. Students who attend Cromack Elementary will now go to Castañeda Elementary, and Garza Elementary students will go to Southmost, while Del Castillo students are going to go to Morningside. And a Valley surgeon is trying to decide if he should allow the state of Texas to build a border wall on his property. Construction of the new wall in Zapata County depends on landowners selling their property rights to the state. And Border Report's Sandra Sanchez has the story. And Secretary of State Antony Blinken has arrived in the region to discuss ceasefire efforts in Gaza after President Biden applied new pressure in a phone call with Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. Keir Simmons has the story. We have received multiple calls into our newsroom about those balls of tar washing up over on South Padre Island. We reported that tar has been washing up on the beach for several weeks now, and many are concerned about safety, particularly the effects when it comes in contact with skin. Well, we took your concerns to Texas General Land Commissioner Don Buckingham, who says the tar is more of a nuisance than a concern. The university released a statement claiming protesters ignored repeated attempts to remove tents, and they physically engaged with and verbally assaulted a dean of students' staff. The statement also claimed that some of the protesters are not believed to be affiliated with the university. Polls predicted former President Trump would win big, and he did. The former president dominated the Iowa caucuses, but there were surprises in the races as well. And one candidate ended his bid for the White House. Now the focus shifts to New Hampshire. Alice Barr has the very latest. All right, and in your campaign 2024 news, New Hampshire's delegates are going to be represented at the Democratic National Convention this summer. The committee voted after months of infighting about the election schedule, and New Hampshire typically holds the first presidential primary, but refused to comply with a new Democratic calendar that moved South Carolina first. As a result, President Biden did not file to appear on the ballot for New Hampshire's primary. However, the president still won the contest as a write-in candidate. And former President Donald Trump returns to court today for one of his trials and could face more fines. Testimony will begin with Keith Davidson, who is seen as a vital building block for the prosecution's case. Davidson represented 2 women who have said that they have had sexual encounters with the former president. He is one of multiple key players expected to be called to the stand in advance of prosecutors' star witness Michael Cohen. Former President Trump's former lawyer and personal fixer, the former president voicing his frustrations of being stuck in a courtroom and not out on the campaign trail. Ceremony is expected to get underway today in the murder trial of Victor Godinez. Godinez faces a capital murder charge for the 2019 shooting of DPS trooper Moises Sanchez. Right, and happening today, Donna ISD and Region 1 will be hosting a phlebotomy technician training session. It'll be held at the Learning and Development Center starting at 1 p.m. and you must bring a valid form of ID and a social security card with you, as well as be authorized to work. Now, if you'd like more information about this training session, you can call the number on your screen. And the city of Brownsville remains under stage 2 drought conditions. The restrictions come months ahead of the summer season and the city urges residents to conserve water as much as possible. Jeremiah Marshall spoke with leaders on how the community can conserve water. Sounds good, Jessica. Thank you. Well, today is primary day for several states as the 2024 presidential race heats up. Now, both presidential candidates are making their cases to voters for why they are the right person for the job. Bree Jackson has the very latest with what's at stake today. And President Biden has unveiled his 2025 budget proposal. It calls for tax breaks for families, lowering health care costs, higher taxes on the wealthy and corporations, and protecting and strengthening Social Security and Medicare. The proposal means that parents could get an increased child tax credit and home buyers could get a tax credit worth up to $10,000. Now, it is unlikely the request will be passed in the House and the Senate to become law. The boil water notice could be lifted today for Elsa residents. That's because the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is expected to test the water today after the city of Elsa performed maintenance work on the water system. Now, the boil notice will remain in effect until further notice, so you're still asked to boil all water intended for consumption vigorously for at least 1 minute. This does include drinking, cooking, making ice, and brushing your teeth. And if you have any questions at all, you can call Elsa City Hall. Men are being held without bond this morning after getting arrested for possession of cocaine. It was all part of a sting operation, and investigators say Rolando Quintanilla Aguas delivered 10 bundles of cocaine to an undercover agent in a grocery store parking lot in Brownsville. And on the Democratic side, there are 2 District 15 candidates looking to unseat De La Cruz. Considered to be a Texas needle, the district stretches from most of the Hidalgo County area all the way up to Seguin and covers a few counties. Our Frank McCaffrey spoke with John Villarreal-Rigney, Michelle Vallejo, and Representative De La Cruz. Early voting starts today for the March primaries. NBC 23 has everything you need to know so that you can make an informed decision at the ballot box. Now, Texas and several other states are going to hold primary elections on March the 5th, also known as Super Tuesday. Voters are choosing candidates for U.S. President, U.S. Senate, congressional offices, and more. Texas is an open primary state, meaning that voters can participate in either party's contest, regardless of their registered party affiliation. And also, there are 161 Republican and 244 Democrat delegates up for grabs. Good stuff there, Jessica. Thank you. Now, the final push ahead of the South Carolina Republican primary is in full force. Candidates Donald Trump and Nikki Haley are crisscrossing, delivering final messages to voters ahead of Saturday. Now, the polls do show that that Haley actually is trailing Trump by a lot, despite being the former governor. And Google has a new AI-powered feature, that aims to make online shopping easier. Rich DeMuro explains how in today's Tech Smart segment. 2 different messages. Now, President Joe Biden highlighted the need for Congress to pass the bipartisan border bill, while former President Donald Trump pinned the blame on Biden for the current status of our border. Washington correspondent Basil John joins us live about the message sent by both Democrats and Republicans. Good morning, Basil.
Well, Danielle, good morning. And yes, even though President Joe Biden...
Well, if you're flying out of the McAllen International Airport, you might want to plan on getting there early. That's because asylum seekers are on standby for their flights. Border Report's Sandra Sanchez tells us what you need to know when it comes to traveling out of McAllen or Harlingen. Listen to this. A satellite will likely make an uncontrolled return through Earth's atmosphere today. According to the European Space Agency, ERS-2 is expected to re-enter around 10:30 in the morning. The satellite is said to weigh as much as an adult male rhinoceros, and if you're wondering if there's any danger associated with this return, no. The ESA says most of the satellite will burn up as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere, with some remaining fragments likely to fall into the ocean. Plus, none of the fragments are going to contain any toxic or radioactive substances. And if you need further assurance, the ESA says that the chances of you getting hurt by space debris are under 1 in 100 billion. So basically, you'll get struck by lightning before you ever get hurt by space debris. And NASA's looking for its next crop of experimental Martians. The space agency is seeking applicants for its next simulated 1-year Mars surface mission. And the 2025 mission is going to help inform NASA's plans for human exploration of the red planet. And we also wanted to give you a heads up about tax form 1099K. Now, this is for earnings that you may have made on mobile apps. In 2024 news, we're keeping an eye on the local races headed to a runoff in May. A runoff election is necessary when candidates do not receive 50% of the votes. And here's a quick list of runoff elections that we're following: Cameron County Sheriff, Cameron County Tax Assessor Collector, and State Representative District 37. Runoffs are also going to be held for Hidalgo County 32nd State District Judge, Hidalgo County Justice of the Peace Precinct 3, Place 1 Hidalgo County Justice of the Peace Precinct 4, Place 1, and Cameron County Precinct Chair number 15. The runoff elections are going to be held in May on the 28th.